God has called his people, you and I, children of God, to live a certain way. God wants us to live a holy way, a holy life. God wants you and I to live a life that's full of justice and fairness. But as you know, as we live in this world, there will come temptations that will come our way that will tempt us to go about getting the things that we may want the wrong way. We may want fame and fortune, wealth, promotions, or whatever it may be, but there may be a time where we're tempted to go about getting those things the wrong way. And the question is, can we live in this world and be justice and fair and put those evil ways, those evil temptations off to the side and still trust God enough to do the right thing? Stay tuned for this week's lesson. We're going to meet a group of people who God gives a commandments to live the right way, and let's see what they do. Stay tuned. Hello, my name is Reverend Dr. John W. Wilson III, bringing you the Sunday School lesson for this Sunday, January the 16th, 2022. Thank you for joining me today. Our lesson is called Justice and Fairness. It will come from Exodus chapter 23. We'll look at the first 12 verses. But before we get started, I want to invite you to like, share, and subscribe. And then if you feel led to leave a comment in the comment section, I would love to dialogue with you. Something you may have learned about this lesson or that you want to share, something that could be done better, or a question that you may have. Leave it in the comment section. I promise you I will answer it. So let's get right into this exciting lesson. It's going to be great. It's going to be fantastic. We got a lot to see what God says through the prophet of Moses. We are looking at Exodus chapter 23. If you know anything about Exodus, it means to depart from, to exit from. God has exited the people of Israel from the land of Egypt. You know about the 10 plagues. You know about the crossing of the Red Sea. And so you know God's promise to take them to the promised land. So that's the big picture. God's people did not belong in Egypt with all that defilement, with all that unethical living, with all that unholy living. God liberates them after over 400 years, promised them to take them to a promised land. Now, when he takes them to a promised land, guess what? You can't bring your old baggage into a new place. When you go buy a house, you don't bring your old furniture into a new house. You usually get new furniture because this is a new and special place. And so God wants their conduct to be special, to be holy, to reflect who he is, for them to reflect them as children of God. And so he gives them the 10 commandments in Exodus 20 on Mount Sinai. And so those are the 10 principal commandments. And then he continues through the rest of the chapter, at least to 23, giving them additional laws or principles to live by based on the 10 commandments. And so in our section here, 23, there are ethical standards to live by. When you get to the promised land, this is how I want you to live ethically. When you get to the promised land, this is how I want you to live in a humane fashion, meaning having mercy and grace for your fellow neighbor. So he's telling them how to live, how to have justice, how to have fairness in the new promised land that they're just weeks away from. So let's get into our lesson. Let's see what he has to say. And I believe that this lesson here speaks to all generations, especially our generation today. Our generation more than ever needs justice and fairness, and we can learn from this lesson. If we live by this lesson, all these division and all this chaos that's going on and back and forth and bickering, this great divide in our nation, it would go away if we abide by what we have in chapter 23, the first 12 verses. Okay? This is timely. So let's look at what Moses has to say. Okay, verse 23, verse 1. It says, remember the context is justice and fairness. Have a society that is governed, that is known by its justice and fairness on how people treat each other on a day-to-day basis and even in the legal system. Okay? So the first thing Moses says, you shall not spread a false report. Okay? False report. That means lie. That means you don't spread something that's untrue. In a common term, we would say, do not gossip. And we have to understand how bad gossip is, how bad it is to spread a false report on someone else. A false report can slander somebody. A false report can keep that person from getting justice. A false report or gossip can give other people a bad impression of that person, and those other people, based on this slanderous or this gossip, mistreats that other person. So gossip can lead to injustice, and it can also lead to inhumane treatment of that individual because somebody has, or a group of people have decided to spread gossip about that individual. Now, a little bit more about gossip. I think you and I, if we live long enough, you've had somebody gossip about you, and you don't like that. When somebody spreads bad gossip, it can cost that person their job, cost them their reputation, cost them good standing in church. It can force them to have to leave a church. It can force them to have to leave a job. It can come into the household and destroy a household based on a false report, a report that is unsubstantiated, that is not verified, that is not true. Okay? So I want to challenge you and I is that when we speak of people for the sake of justice, for the sake of humanity, because God wants us to do this, commands us to do this, let's make sure that when we speak of somebody, we are not spreading a false report. We are talking about something that we know to be true firsthand, and that we're not talking about what somebody called us on the phone the night before and now we're telling everybody else. Spreading rumors, spreading gossip is hurtful and it's painful. And it destroys the unity that God wants his people to have. And so when they go into that promised land, God does not want that society to be known by gossip. It wants it to be known by spreading a good report. Because when you spread a good report, no matter what it says, a truthful report, that's a reflection of justice. That's a reflection of humane treatment. Okay? So do not spread a false report. It undermines justice. It undermines fairness. Then he goes on to say, the second part of verse 1, chapter 23, it says, you shall not join hands with a wicked man to be a malicious witness. This is now going to something that's maybe ethical or social, now something more legal or something that involves the legal system. It says, therefore, you shall not join hands. That means you should not become part of. You should not conspire with. You shall not join with a wicked man. That means a man that's unethical, a man that tells lies, a man that is untruthful, a man that has bad intentions, to be a malicious witness. Meaning that you don't you don't join with one other person to testify wickedly or untruthfully against somebody who is innocent. In the day of Israel, they didn't have lie detectors. They didn't have all this kind of stuff. They required, in the legal system, they required to have two witnesses. If two witnesses would testify against an individual, it's very difficult for that individual, his testimony, to overthrow what two truthful witnesses had said based on what they had seen. So when you have two witnesses that are unethical, that are wicked and malicious, it undermines the justice system. It undermines what is fair and right for that individual. So when you cahoots with somebody and you say, we're going to lie on that individual and we're going to lie on an innocent person just for some type of profit or gain, so that we will not get attached to that crime. You are undermining the judicial system. You are undermining fairness, and you're going, more importantly, you're going against what God has commanded us to be. That's truthful and fair and operate in justice in everything that we do. See, I'll say this again. You heard my teaching. I believe in the fear of the Lord. That if you fear the Lord, if you reverence the Lord, if you understand who God is and who you are, your position and God's position, guess what? Telling the truth, giving a good report, being a faithful, truthful witness will not be a problem. But the problem is that when you overestimate your cleverness and who you are, and underestimate God and who He is and His wisdom and His ability to know all things, you and I make a mistake. Okay? You and I make a mistake. God will not bless anybody who joins hands with an evil person to become a malicious witness, to give a false report or a false testimony about somebody else. You see, we see this, to me, in our political realm. Politics is, I call it the devil's playground, because you don't know what is true. And people will do anything to win, even if it means lying on somebody else. And lying on somebody else doesn't mean that you tell a lie on that person all the time. It could mean that you withhold valuable information, or you tell half-truth. You don't tell the whole truth, or you tell truth in a way that is misleading. You do what our media does. You do what our politicians do. They oftentimes are malicious witnesses. They report information that's not true. They spread false reports that's not true. That's why we're in the situation we are. We have too many people in high places spreading false reports, that are wicked and that are malicious witnesses. Too many. Too many. Okay? So when we're children of God, we cannot operate this way. Those people in Egypt during that time, God did not want to bring those type of people into the promised land. It would cause nothing but chaos. That promised land was designed for holy people. God had milk and honey and everything set up for them. He wanted to make sure they had the right mindset, the right living, the right ethical living, the right humane treatment of one another, doing what's right concerning other people. That's what this lesson is about. Justice and fairness. The question is, can you and I operate being a just and fair person in all times? And what Moses does, and God gives it to him in these commandments and these things there, those are areas where we can fall short of being just and fair. And we got to make sure that we understand what God expects of us. We got to understand there's a God up there watching us, what we do each and every day, each and every minute, second of the day. Okay? So, don't be a malicious witness. Okay? The other thing is that he's going to say, don't go with the crowd. When you know the crowd is wrong, you have to be strong enough to say, I'm not going to be part of that. Look what it says in verse 2. You shall not fall in with the many to do evil. When you know the many or the majority are doing something wrong, like a riot or a fight or even a protest or even something like that, and you know it has evil intentions, and you know that truth is not being told, guess what? Do not fall in the company with the many or with the majority, nor shall you bear witness in a lawsuit siding with the many, meaning that have nothing to do with that majority who is doing something wrong. I remember in college one day, we were the Black Student Union, that's what we called it way back then, and we were protesting something that we were told that was unjust, that we knew nothing about, that he just haphazardly did to us, and we felt that it was going to affect the black community. And so a whole bunch of people protesting, just protesting. And then we find out later that the person over it had been in conversation about it. They did tell them, and we were protesting in vain. And so I say that to say is that you and I, when we see protests coming up, we got to be careful so that we don't jump the gun. We got to be careful that we have all the information before we decide to riot or protest or whatever we got to do. Riot peacefully. I'm not saying riot and tear up stuff, but type of things, peaceful demonstration. Okay, we got to be careful. We got to do our homework. We got to make sure, as best of our knowledge, that we are doing the right thing and that we're not being misled. Then on the other hand, what this is saying specifically, if we know something is wrong, we got to run away from it and make sure that we have nothing to do with it. We cannot be partakers of being involved in protests or being involved with the many when we know the many or the majority is wrong. That's what it's saying. It's saying that we have to take a stand when things are wrong. We got to stand for justice, even though there's tremendous peer pressure, even though the majority are saying this is right. You and I, when we know something is wrong, we got to be able to stand strong with the peer pressure. It says, nor shall you bear witness in a lawsuit. Don't testify about something that you know that's wrong just because you're feeling pressure from the majority, especially if you know it's wrong. It says, siding with the many so as to pervert justice. When we side with the many or the majority, and we know the majority is wrong, we are perverting justice. We are going against what God has called us to do. We are putting an innocent person or an innocent group of people in jail, in prison, somewhere where they should not be, simply because we refuse to tell the truth and we give into peer pressure. Be strong, people. Don't give into peer pressure. Stand for what is right. I remember at the school, I may have told you the story before, at St. Philip's School in Dallas, Texas, South Dallas, Texas. And my kids were going there when they were young, and I walked in there and I see this wall, it's a mural, it's beautiful. And all these schools of fish are going this way. They're just swimming this way. But there's one fish that is swimming against the grain. And it says, and the caption says, dare to be different. And what God is saying through Moses is that sometimes as a Christian, standing up for what is right means going against the grain. Standing for what is right means daring to be different. Because we stand for justice and what is fair, and we answer to a holy and reverent God. That ought to be enough incentive for us to always do what is right. But we need people that will stand up and speak truth to power, no matter whether they're in the minority or they're in the majority. We need people standing up, speaking truth to power. Okay? So it says also this, siding with the many as to pervert justice. We don't want to pervert justice. We don't want to go against what God has established. It says, nor shall you be partial to a poor man in a lawsuit. If you're in a jury, okay, and this is really talking about legality. When you talk about malicious witness, that's legal terms, okay? Or bear witness in a lawsuit, that's legal terms. So we're talking about in legalities, doing what's right in the justice system, okay? Nor shall you be partial to a poor man in his lawsuit. If you're in a jury, or you're the ones helping decide the fate of a person, and you see that this person is poor, do not sympathize in such a way that you pervert justice and side with the poor man, knowing that the poor man is wrong in the lawsuit. If you hear what I'm saying, a lot of times we may say, well, I'm going to side with him because they're black. No, that's not right. What God is calling us to do, no matter what their situation in life is, if they're poor, if they're a minority, if they have a history of being oppressed, they have a history of things being done wrong to them, but you know in your heart that this person, in spite of all that, is wrong, is guilty of what they're being charged with, you have got to do the right thing and give justice to that other person, whether that person is rich or poor or whatever. Give that person justice. Don't be a sympathizer to the poor and pervert justice. Don't be a sympathizer to the minority, to the black, brown, or yellow, or red, and pervert justice. When you are called on a witness stand, when you're called to be a juror, or whatever you're called to enact justice, you have got to do what is right. Just like it's wrong to side with somebody who's rich in a lawsuit that you know is wrong, it is wrong to side with a poor person in a lawsuit when you know that that person is wrong, when you know that there's overwhelming evidence that speaks to this person being wrong. What Moses is saying, what God is saying through Moses is that do the right thing. Be justice and fair in all of your actions. If you do that, our society will be much better. See, right now, our society is so caught up in it's hard to get justice anywhere. It's so hard, we don't even know what justice is. We got people bearing false witnesses, people giving a false report, people siding with the rich, people siding with the poor, people perverting justice. You see all the chaos that it caused? If people just did the right thing, all this stuff would go away. So God is calling you to live as if you're living in the promised land, that he's prepared for you, and always do the right thing. Let's look at verse 4. If you meet your enemy's ox, this is on taking out of the legal system, more of a relational system with your brother or your sister whom you may not like or who may be your enemy. Okay? How do you do that? Okay? And a lot of times we can be justice and fair, enact justice and fairness if we don't know the person or if we like the person. We can do that easily. But can you enact justice and fairness to somebody that doesn't like you or you don't like somebody? That's the real test of what's in your heart. And that's what God has challenged us to do. No, I just don't want you to be justice and fair to people you like or people you don't even know. I want you to be justice and fair to everybody. People that hate you and people that you consider your enemy. I want you to be, if you can have a just attitude or just ways, and you can be fair, hey, you're the type of person that I want in this promised land. You're the type of person that I am pleased with. That's what God is saying. So if you meet your enemy, ox, so you have your enemy's ox. Enemy is somebody who you don't like or who you think is hostile toward you or you're hostile toward them. Is ox or his donkey going astray. You see them wandering off. Okay? In our day and time, you see them wandering off. They maybe get hit by a car, but in those days, you see them wandering off. They may be killed by a lion or a tiger or a bear or somebody. You shall bring it back to him. Okay? You shall bring it back to him. See, a lot of times, we only do good to people who do good for us. I wash your hand, you wash my hand. This is talking about somebody who ain't washing your hand, who's hurting your hand. Can you still do good? Can you still be fair? Can you still have justice? Can you still do the right thing even if it's somebody that you don't like? Your enemy. Somebody who's hurt you. Somebody who's taken advantage of you. Somebody who may have cost you money. Somebody who may have fired you. Somebody who may have hurt you really bad. Can you do what's right? Can you do what's right? For the sake of the Lord. For the sake of the Lord. That's why we do right things, for the sake of the Lord, because it pleases God, and this is what God asked us to do. Okay? So, if you see an enemy's ox or donkey and wandering astray, the commandment is, go bring it back to your enemy. And the reason why, if you bring it back to your enemy, maybe that person will not be your enemy anymore. Maybe you can become friends. I had people in ministry that we didn't get along at first. We were enemies at first. But over time, and being kind to one another, we became the best of friends. The best of friends. I'm going to tell you the story this way. Where I live at, this lady lost her dog. She lost her dog for 2 weeks. And where I live, they have coyotes. Me and my wife assumed that this little 12-pound dog got killed by coyotes. But what happened was this dog ran off maybe an acre or 2 or 3 acres to another person's house. The person did not know whose dog it was. He took it in, kept the dog in his house for a week. They went on vacation, took the dog with them over to their sister's house for another week, and nourished that dog, bought a dog bed, groomed that dog, took care of that dog. And then when they saw signs posted, lost dog, they took that dog that they had cared for 2 weeks, fed and did everything for, and gave it back to that person. And the question is, if they were enemies, would you do the same? And God is saying you have to do the same thing. No matter if they're enemy or not, you are to always practice justice and fairness in all that you do. That person that did that, I'm sure if they were enemies, he would have done the same thing. That's the type of person that person is or that family is. And so the question is, can you be just and fair even if it's your enemy? Somebody you don't like. Okay? All right? Let's look at the next one. If you see a donkey of one who hates you, so you got somebody now you don't like, the first one was you didn't like them. Now they don't like you. Okay? You're considered their enemy, or they have issues with you. But if you see a donkey of someone who hates you lying down under its burden, meaning that they have weighed this animal, donkey is a beast of burden. They have weighed this donkey down so heavily that the donkey is tired and it just lays down. Donkey says, look, I done had enough. You're working me to death. He's laying down because of that burden he has on his back and the work and the walking, all that he has to do. It just says, I had enough. He said, you shall refrain from leaving him with it. Meaning that person that hates you, you don't walk away and do nothing. Okay? Even though that person hates you, you don't leave him and that donkey in that situation. Because that's not what justice and fairness is about. It's not about whether you like a person or not, or whether somebody likes you. It's doing the right thing. He said, you shall rescue it with him. You mean that you shall help that person who hates you unpack and reload that donkey so that donkey won't have that burden. You don't just look and see, I don't even like that person. That person hates me. I'm not even going to deal with them. I'm just going to walk across on the side of the street and he won't see me, but I see him, and I'm going to make sure that I'm not going to be anywhere in a position to help that individual. That's not what God is saying. If you help somebody who hates you, guess what? That's the first step of reconciliation. How can that person hate you after you have hurt that person? So part of the thing what God is trying to do, he wants people to reconcile relationships. And sometimes it takes those who are spiritual to make the first move in reconciling that relationship. These two relationships are being reconciled based on what that person or that spiritual person has done. The first one, he helps the enemy with his ox who sees going straight. He brings it back to him. The second one, the donkey's falling down because of the weight of the load, and he helps the individual who hates him restore that donkey. And now that's reconciling relationships. Okay? We are not just called to help people who we like. We are not just called to do the right thing for people who we like, or who look like us, or who live in the same neighborhood, who share the same experiences like us. No, we are called to do what's right in the eyes of God, no matter what. Okay? All right, let's look and see what else he says. Verse 6, you shall not pervert justice. That means undo justice. Do what the opposite of what justice is. Okay? Do to your poor in this lawsuit. Meaning that somebody is poor, they deserve justice too. If somebody is poor, you can't say, they're used to being beaten down. I'm a side with the rich. Okay? No, that's wrong. You always do what is right. You always care for the individual. You always have compassion. You always do what is right. You don't, the poor is due justice just like anybody else. We have to understand that. If you find yourself on a jury duty, that poor person has just due justice just like anybody else, just like you and I. Have you ever had injustice done to you? That's a horrible thing. Just think about it. I've had it done to me. People lying on you. People saying the truth, and yet the truth is they're not honoring the truth. They go and still pervert justice. And have you ever seen people standing around and they know it's wrong, and yet nobody has enough courage to say what is right? Do not be a person who perverts justice. Be strong. Stand strong. Stand for justice. That's what God's people do. They stand for justice. They're equality for all. Justice is for all people. Rich, poor, in between. Okay? Don't side with the rich. Don't let the rich tempt you or pressure you to side with them. No. Do what is right always in this lawsuit. It says, keep far from a false charge. Okay? Do not be part of some kind of charge that is falsely given on somebody else. And do not kill the innocent and righteous. Okay? When somebody's on trial for killing somebody, do not give a false charge. Do what is right. Do not kill the innocent and the righteous. Okay? It's hard being a Christian because as Christians, we're called to do what's right, to be righteous, to be fair, to be just in all that we do. But you know what? We got God on our side. When we please God, when we do the right thing, it pleases God. When we do the right thing, it pleases God. God has rewards for us in heaven. When we do what is right and please God, we are more like Christ than we can ever be like. Okay? It says this, for I will not acquit the wicked. That means when you do what is wrong, you become guilty. Now God has to deal with you. Now God has consequences that's going to happen to you because you have sent an innocent person on death row. You have caused that innocent person to be killed. You have given a false report. Now, God will not acquit the wicked. He will hold you accountable for the evil that you've done. It says, and you shall take no bribe, for a bribe binds the clear-sighted. Okay? Don't be a person that takes a bribe. You say, well, no, I would never take a bribe. But you know what happens sometimes on your job or in certain circumstances? Somebody starts being nice to you because they want a promotion. They want something. They're nice to you and nice to you. Take you out to dinner. They go out to a happy hour with you. They go do this with you. They're just so nice. And what's saying here is that sometimes you got to be able to separate the two. Yes, that person is nice to me, but yet I have to do what's right. I have to do what's right. Yeah, we all know that you shouldn't take a bribe on a witness stand. We know that. That's easy. We all know that as a juror, you should not take any kind of bribe, any vacation, or any type of gift, or anything. We know that that's wrong. But be careful about the subtle approaches. When somebody's coming to you because they want something, but you got to always do what is right. Because if you take bribes, if you take gifts, if you don't do what's right, if you let that person get to you and get what they want, it says, for bribes blind and clear-sighted. It's going to blind you from doing what is right and subverts the cause of those who are in the right. The person who deserves that promotion doesn't get it. The person who deserves to be set free is not set free. Because you let the bribe blind you. It has blinded you. Okay? Okay? All right, good. Good. It said, now, number 9, you shall not oppress a sojourner. Okay? You know the heart of a sojourner. Okay? You shall not oppress. You shall not keep down. You shall not beat down. You shall not mistreat. You shall not enact evil upon a sojourner, a stranger in the land. Okay? A foreigner in the land. Okay? That's whether they're legal or illegal. You have no right to oppress a sojourner. One of the things I'm really upset about, I get upset about, is that we allow illegal aliens to come over, and then when they come over, we mistreat them. We have them coming over simply because many of us, not all of us, want to pay them a low wage. We want to get cheap labor for some reason. And to me, that's oppressing the person, the stranger, the alien, the sojourner. When we don't pay them a fair wage, when we say we want them over, we want to have them to come over, and then we mistreat them, is something wrong with that. We should mistreat no one, whether they have a right to be here or not. We are not, as Christians, in the business of mistreating people. When we pay somebody to do something to us, we should strive to pay a fair salary based on what they have to offer, not because of their position in life or because they are a stranger or a sojourner in the land. We should strive to pay a fair price, something fair. Then we know we're doing the right thing. You shall not oppress a sojourner. Why? Because you know the heart of a sojourner. You know how hard it is to live in a foreign land, to live in Egypt, and to have somebody mistreat you. You know what it's like. You know what it's like to work hours and not get paid, or get paid very little. You know what it's like not to have enough to eat because you're not being paid enough to take care of your family. You know what it's like to work many hours and not be able to spend time with your family. You're so tired, all you can do is work and sleep and work and sleep. You know what it's like to have somebody with their hand on your neck, pushing you down, working you like a dog. You know what that's like, to be mistreated. So why would you want to do that to somebody else? Why would you want to do that to somebody else? You were sojourners in the land of Egypt. And what God is saying is that remember the grace and mercy that has been shown to you by God, and show that same grace and mercy to the sojourner. Don't be like the people in Egypt and oppress the oppressor, because you ought to know better than that. You know what it feels like. Don't do what was done to you in that sense. I remember a couple of times I had a Hispanic friend. I'm not sure if he was illegal or not. I'm not sure. But he had been in the United States for a long time. And he came to me. He had done some work with me. But he came to me in time of distress. One person that he had painted for, and they agreed to a price. And when it came time to pay, the Christian person, did not want to pay him and wanted to add more work for him that they did not agree to. This is a Christian person taking advantage of someone who may speak the language like you do, who's not from here, who may be a sojourner, is a sojourner, a foreigner living here, and you take advantage of him by not agreeing to pay as agreed and then adding on more work. And the same person came to me and helped me one time. I went to court with him. This man had done some work for this man. The man writes him a $1,500 check, a check that he can't cash because it bounces. And he asked me to go to court with him. That's oppressing the sojourner. That's taking advantage of the foreigner. Knowing that you're not going to do right. Knowing that you're writing a bad check. And everybody can look at their life and see, whether you're black, white, brown, and see times where they've been mistreated. And remember the feeling what that felt like, being mistreated. And we should not want that on anybody else. Don't mistreat the sojourner. I don't care if they're legally or illegally here. That's a different story. Don't mistreat anybody. Anybody. Pay them a fair wage. Don't work them to death. Understand they have family. Understand they want exactly what you want. A nice family, an opportunity to make a living, to make enough to eat, to make enough to put gas in the car, to have shelter over the roof. Don't mistreat, don't try to pay them the least. Pay them what's fair or leave them alone. And now we go something a little different on a personal nature. Laws about the Sabbath and then certain festivals. But we're going to talk about the Sabbath in particular. It says, for 6 years you shall sow your land and gather its yield. So 6 years you're going to work hard. Okay? But on the seventh year, you shall let it rest and lie fallow. Okay? That the poor of your people may eat. Okay? A couple of reasons why. You want to work 6 years, till your land, cultivate it, harvest it for 6 years. On that 7th year, almost like the year of Jubilee, on the 7 weeks of feast, that type of thing, 7 weeks of Sabbath, okay? You let it rest. One, you let the ground rest, okay? Okay? You let it rest. And two, here, that the poor people may eat. So during that year where you're not cultivating, you're not harvesting, you have people that are poor, they can come and just grab food to eat off of it at will and feed their family. And when they're feeding their family and they've had enough, you let the wild beast of the field, you let them eat, okay? You're resting your land, you're letting it get its strength back, and then at the same time, you're allowing the poor to have something to eat and the beast of the field. Okay? So you shall do likewise with your vineyard and with your olive orchard. Okay? All right? You're going to have voluntary crop that's uncultivated, that's not harvested, for the poor so they can eat and they can nourish their body and they can put food away. That's humane. That's humane. That's caring for those who may be in need. That's caring for animals who God has allowed you to be stewards of. Okay? It's helpful. It's compassionate. It's humane. It's merciful. And then it says here in verse 12, our last verse, 6 days you shall do your work. Okay? But on the 7th day you shall rest. This is mimicking, this one and the one before is mimicking God's creation. Remember, God rested on the Sabbath, okay? And what God doesn't want us to be is doesn't want us to be workaholics. nor does he want us to work our servants, our children, 7 days a week, non-stop. The body needs rest. Like before, the ground needs rest. The body needs rest. Nature needs rest. We need rest. Okay? Your people in your household need rest. God demonstrated that when he created the earth. 6 days he created the earth. The 7th day he rested. Did God actually need rest? No. That was an example for us, for you and for me. Have a day set aside where we give it to the Lord. That's keeping God as number one priority. When we work nonstop 7 days a week, God is not our priority. Our work has become our idol. But when we set aside a day for the Lord, he's first in our life. It says here, 6 days you shall do 6 days shall you do your work, but on the 7th day you shall rest, that your ox and your donkey may have rest. You rest all your animals. Everybody, we're physical beings. We need rest. And the son of your servant and the alien, the sojourner, the stranger, he needs rest too. Needs time with his family too. He needs time to regroup too. May be refreshed so he can come back and work another 6 days energized. That's a healthy society. A healthy society is not one that works all the time, that harvests all the time. A healthy society, one that recognizes even from our harvesting, we need a year of rest. Even from our daily work, we need a day of rest per week. And we do those things, guess what? We'll be a healthy society. So, what is God saying here? Keep God first in all that we do. How do we keep these commandments? Reverence God. Fear God. Fear the Lord. That will be a great motivation for us to do what is right. And what does God want us to do? He wants us to walk humbly, practice justice. Do the right thing, always. Don't worry about peer pressure. Don't let that get to you. Stand strong. You answer to God. You don't answer to them. Those majority of people will leave you in a minute. Those majority of people come and go. They're going to lead you down what's called the broad road that leads to destruction. And we as Christians take the narrow road that leads to righteousness. Just remember that. Stand strong. Be strong. Do what is right. Stand for God. And God's going to bless you. Put God first by taking the appropriate amount of rest for all that you have. God bless you. I hope something that was said today that will help you in your preparation for your Sunday school, that will help you in your Sunday school class. I hope that you are taking rest as you need it. Your body, the physical body, it needs rest. And I hope that your walk with the Lord reflects justice and fairness. I'll talk to you next week. Have a great week. Have a great day.